Welcome back, friends, to the channel. This is Ina Maybon of Light Cycle Astrology. Today, we are getting into some weekend astrology, the Aquarian Sun that sextiles Jupiter. Let's go ahead and pull up the real-time clock and get a look at this aspect as it begins to take place. It's moving into that 3-degree range of influence right around January the 21st, this coming Saturday here, when the Sun moves into the sign of Aquarius and then immediately begins making that sextile to Jupiter. This aspect perfects right around January the 24th here, which is going to be next Tuesday. And now, if you haven't seen my astrology video for the astrology of the Venus-Saturn conjunction that I made this week, go ahead and check that out if you want to get a fuller sense of all of the energies that are commingling here, because we have the new moon that is also coming through over the weekend. We have that Venus-Saturn conjunction, and then we also have this sextile between the Sun and Jupiter here. So that's a lot of planetary energies that are commingling in different aspects. So if you want to get the fullest sense of the weekend astrology, go ahead and check that video out as well. But anyway, this aspect is then going to be separating after Tuesday. We have to wait for it to move out of that 3-degree range of influence by all the way until Saturday, the following Saturday, January the 28th. So overall, it's about an 8-day aspect that we are going to be feeling this over. Okay, well, let's get into the archetypal themes now. Normally, I sort of lay out a few themes, maybe 8 or 10 themes to watch for the combination of energy that is transpiring. But this time, I thought instead of me trying to hit the bullseye or give examples that may or may not be accurate to you guys watching, I thought it might be better just to paint an overall picture of the archetypal energies that are commingling together with this aspect. So right off the bat, we have to get into the Sun, how the Sun behaves in the sign of Aquarius. So having the Sun move now into a new sign, we are going to see a different expression of the way the Sun filters its natural significations through. This time it's going to be filtering through the lens of Saturn, but specifically Saturn's daytime or diurnal or masculine temple that is also said to be an Aries temple, elementally speaking. And the modality of this temple is, in ancient astrology, they called it solid. We're used to hearing it as fixed, but essentially what happens is the modality of Aquarius takes the energy that turned or began the new season at the time of the winter solstice for the Capricorn month, and then it stabilizes all of that new seasonal energy as a mainstay. So it's smack dab in the middle of the winter season now that the Sun is moving into. So we're stabilizing the winter mode here. One very interesting thing is that we also see that the Sun is moving into Aquarius, which is the opposite temple that the Sun itself calls home in Leo. That's a big part of this energy that we see. This is a really fascinating, almost deeply philosophical thing to think about when you imagine that the Sun, which is a very unique planet in astrology as compared to the other planets, is moving into a place that is a natural foreign land to its own archetypal themes. So what I mean by that is the Sun is home in the sign of Leo because Leo is a very bright time of year. So the Sun naturally finds resonance with the time of year that Leo happens in. It's the brightest time of the year. It's the hottest. It's the summer. All of these things are really, pretty much representing the solar theme. So what is that solar theme? Well, when we look at what the Sun could represent for us, archetypalism is simply a shared experience that we will all have walking around down here on the planet in this body incarnated with a soul that comes out of the divine unity of the entire cosmos. However you want to think about that, in whatever religious or non-religious way you can imagine, we pretty much all agree that on some higher level, we're all one, right? Everything comes back to being unified. But the sun represents the soul that incarnates out of that wholeness and becomes individuated. It gains its own soul that has its own specific destiny that I believe probably is meant to just sort of work together with all of the other incarnate souls that are down here, all sharing this human experience. So it's a very deep archetype, obviously. But I want to share with you a little bit of a, I don't know if you would call it an epiphany, but it was a moment that really rocked me. Yesterday, I was up at the Ellison Onizuka Visitor Center at the Mauna Kea Visitor Center right below the summit where I sometimes work. And I was about to summit and do some stargazing, but I was there standing at the Viz, and I was looking at this screen that had a live image of the sun. It was hooked up to this big telescope that had a filter on it. And I'm standing there looking at this giant LCD monitor of the sun, and I'm just watching the sun bubble and spin. And I actually got a little bit of a freak out moment. I panicked on the inside, you know. And the reason is because it occurred to me that if anything goes wrong with this beautiful ball of light, you know, that is burning in order to give us heat and light and existence, you know, ultimately, without this ball of light just being out there and just constantly burning, if something goes wrong with that, I thought to myself, there's nothing, there's no surviving, there's no surviving the absolute zero temperature of space minus a beautiful star that is close enough to us that is giving us just the right amount of heat. I thought, how lucky are we? That's just mind-bogglingly important. And yet we take it for granted because we don't normally look at the sun through a telescope or on an LCD screen like that. So I take it for granted pretty much all the time that we have that beautiful, godlike planet that is burning out there, giving us everything. Without that, there's no life. There's no hope for life. So that is also the sun. The sun gives us life. It gives us the heat. It gives us the central organizing principle that guides our life. It puts in front of us an image that says, imagine being this or doing that before you die. What is life about? That is what the sun says. What do you want your life to be about? Do you want to be a firefighter? Do you want to be a nurse? Do you want to help people? Do you want to be an astrologer? That's the sun in astrology, archetypally speaking. So the sun has this connection to authority, whether it's God, whether it's the policeman, whether it's the judge in the courtroom, whether it's your father, that is, whether it's the CEO. The sun has that important place within society, within the cosmos, that represents something that is a higher power to you or to us collectively. So that is the sun. Now, when the sun moves into the sign of its contrariety, it's essentially saying, my purpose, my goal, my ambition, my authority, the authority that I see around me somehow moves in contrariety to the natural solar energy itself, which is almost hard to think about. But I get a sense that it's something like Bob Marley. Okay, now before you laugh at me, let's think about this. First of all, Bob Marley was an Aquarian sun sign. And what was he? He was a rebel star, right? He got on stage. He was a famous star, famous musician, but he was a rebel star. So the opposition, when a planet is opposite to its own temple, it has that Saturn quality of the opposition, which is rebellious, right? Because he's in a foreign land, he's an outsider, so he can express itself as kind of a rebel at times. So you get the sense that we're talking about something like a Bob Marley archetype who is on stage with the dreadlocks. He's a rebel star. And what does the rebel star do? Or what is the rebel star doing when it makes this aspectual connection to Jupiter by virtue of the sextile? Well, the rebel star, being in Aquarius, is in that superior to the right position of Jupiter, meaning that it will be the planet that impresses its energies or archetypes upon the planet to the left, which in this case is Jupiter. So the rebel star, Bob Marley, is impressing itself upon Jupiter, who is representing an archetype that is far different from the sun in Aquarius. This archetype is Jupiter filtering through a Mars signature, because Mars is the ruler of Aquarius. But specifically, it's also a masculine or daytime temple that is said to be fiery. It's also a cardinal in terms of modality sign that takes the old season and turns into a new season. So you put all this together and you have something like a warrior priest or a religious zealot or a conquistador conquering new lands for the purpose of something moral or just or within the law or etiquette. That's all Jupiter, right? Jupiter has this connection, archetypally speaking, to the moral or ethics that bind society together, the law, the courtroom, the religion that holds, the etiquette in terms of morality together in whatever form the religion takes. That's Jupiter. It's also a very fertile and benefic energy, but it's filtering through the sign of Mars. So it does so at the tip of a sword. So you get things like the conquistador, right? The crusader, the Joan of Arc kind of spiritual warrior archetypal theme that takes place. So the rebel star is essentially impressing itself upon the Joan of Arc or the conquistador or the virtue signaler, as it will, the person that has the moral high ground. But how does he do so? He does so by means of a sextile, which is said to be of the nature of Jupiter, and hence we get something like art or music, which is exactly what Bob Marley did. He stood on that stage and he played his rebel music, and that roused the warrior archetype within all of us because it was rebel music. So this sort of sounds like a kind of a volatile or explosive aspect. Now, I'm going to get into why it's not. I don't believe it's going to turn out that way, but let me just broaden the painting a little bit more here. So in my notes, I have a rebel star like Bob Marley impresses itself upon the warrior priest music. This is the rebel music given to the Zealot Alliance, that they may have the Venusian inspiration to march the new religious flags they carry into the Holy War. The war, this is speaking about the nature of Aries now. The war is about bringing about new life, but by the tip of the sword. Some may die, but this is the wisdom of Mars in his cardinal masculine fiery temple that is the exaltation place of the sun, the ultimate conqueror. The exaltation place of the sun is found in the sign of Aries. That's because the sun overcomes the dark half of the year, moving us into 6 months of a time where we get more light than darkness. So you really, really get a sense that Jupiter in Aries is all about bringing things together into alliance in a moral or judicious kind of way, and it does so with this springtime energy where we see that rams are fighting each other to mate, for the right to mate. So life begins anew at the springtime, but it does so by the tip of the sword. Mars will defend life's ability to come into existence. So be it if things have to die and pass away at that time, because new life is necessary for the whole thing to keep on going. So that is Aries. And with Jupiter there, you get a sense that there's something religious or moralistic or ethical or something about the law or something that is also beneficent in terms of providing fertility or growth or abundance or expansion that we all know for Jupiter. So that is the theme that we get, broadly speaking. But anyway, themes to watch for: bring together a spirit of rebellion that fights against some form of established authority, as represented by the symbolism of the sun in the sun's own place of contrariety with a spirit, together with the spirit of jihad, the crusaders, the conquistador, the zealot, the alliance of the righteous, the fanatical, those that have the moral high ground, the virtue signaler, the competitor, the benevolent and generous conqueror. That's the archetype of Jupiter in Aries there. Okay, now, why is this not going to be, for me, when I was putting all of these things together, I thought, wow, seems to be really volatile and potentially explosive, but why don't I think that it's going to have outcomes that have that volatility to it? Well, I think because there's one caveat to all of this, and that is that the sun offers constructive rebellion here by virtue of its co-presence with its host lord Saturn, who is in good dignity because he resides in his own temple and thus gives the sun the better qualities of his own character, qualities that are like contemplation, commitment, constructive work, and humility. So we see Saturn that spreads out archetypally speaking as things that could be very rebellious and outsider or beyond the limit of rationality. You see that side of Saturn, but on the more constructive side of Saturn, you see the commitment, the hard work, the long lasting, the constructive work, the humility that plays down the ego of the sun. So I get the sense that overall what we're talking about is there is the potential for some, like the marching band, to sort of rouse the warrior who feels like he has the moral high ground to go out and do something new, in sort of a shoot first, ask questions later kind of fashion, a knee-jerk, let's just get it done kind of thing. But I get the sense that the mitigating factor here is that this co-presence that the sun has with Saturn, who is in good dignity, provides a cooling off. It provides a measured or even-handed temperament that impresses itself gracefully through the nature of Venus in that sextile upon the more impatient, shoot first, ask questions later, moralistic, possibly arrogant, cooling down the fires by art, with creativity, with beauty, with love. That is how you see the difference, I think, between a potentially very explosive and volatile signature coming through to one that, if you look at the context, actually turns out pretty benign. It's all in the context of that co-presence with Saturn being in good dignity with the sun here. So that is what I'm seeing for this aspect that is coming through over the weekend and on into next week and even on into the weekend following. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. I hope you got something good out of this. Please leave a comment in the comment section below about what you think. And I'll be back again tomorrow for another astrology video. Take care and have a nice day. I'll see you soon. Bye.